Good afternoon, Leigh. How are we?
Good. I just ran down to the coffee place around the corner from mine to caffeinate myself for this record. And there was 2 women with their babies in the coffee shop. And I just overheard one of them go, I think if we're honest about the dynamic of their marriage... And I was so devastated. I really wanted to stay and hear the convo. Oh, to be able to just like sit down next to that table and be like, I'm just going to listen in and take some notes.
It's my worst bad habit. Like, whenever I go places, my partner will be like, Fi, you're staring. And I'm like, oh, what? He's like, you're staring at these people. I'm like, I'm not staring at anyone. And then we'll like carry on and he'll be like, what did I just say? And I was like, sorry? And he's like, is that conversation more interesting? And I was like, 100% it is. If you just give me 10 minutes and then I'll just be able to tell you everything about their personal lives. I can't help it, Leigh. I'm drawn to other people's drama. What can I say? I'm a nosy Nelly.
Truly.
Nosy Nelly. Welcome to Queer Gals Watch the West Wing. Yeah, I mean, once again, a deranged start from us. Truly on brand, if nothing else, Leigh. But should we start this with a little PSA? Yes,
we should say, listener, Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We really hope for you, if you are, dear listener, and a proud American, we do hope that you've kind of either locked yourself in your car or indeed your kind of downstairs loo to get away from your family for an hour to listen to this episode. We're so happy to be here with you today. And we decided that given we were so close to episode 8, which is the Thanksgiving ep, we thought we would do episodes 7 and 8 back to front. I was going to say back to back. That's not right. Back to front so that we could bring you a Thanksgiving episode on Thanksgiving.
So we're going to be doing episode 8 of season 2.
Shibboleth.
This week. And then next week, we're going to be flipping back to episode 7.
Yes.
So sorry about the non-chronological order, guys, but realistically, we thought if it's Thanksgiving in the White House, we need to be giving it to you on Thanksgiving.
Correct. And I do apologize to any neurodivergent listeners who this has really kind of thrown you for a loop on what is likely to be quite a stressful day in many ways.
Yes, I have definitely spent many a Christmas locked in a bathroom reading a book I've received.
And hey, it doesn't mean we don't love our family. Just on any big family occasion, I think it is necessary, and I would even go so far as to say a healthy choice, to lock oneself away for half an hour to 45 minutes, just for some alone time.
Go for a walk, you know?
Yeah. I once saw a man kayaking through snow off the Irish coast on the day after Christmas. And I just thought, wow, you've had a real time of it to go kayaking in the snow in the Irish Sea.
Yeah, that's
You
rough.
must really have had something that you needed to kind of step away from in quite a big way.
It's a tough 24 hours he's had. Yeah. In more brighter, happier, more festive mood, this is a cracking ep. They were really giving us what we needed this year. And so I would like to say welcome all on this Thanksgiving Day to season 2 of The West Wing, episode 8, Shibboleth. Now, this episode does take place over the week leading up to Thanksgiving. It is also another guest directorial moment from our lovely friend from ER, Dr. Carrie Weaver, aka Laura Ines, I think was how I pronounced her surname last time. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong, Laura. She also, fun factly, received a Primetime Emmy nom for her directing in this episode.
Gorge. Wow.
Yeah.
Love. I will say she has directed Alison Janney to have a full turkey as a scene partner. So we can only commend. It's only deserved.
That's award-winning for me. We will get to this because this episode is like, it just seesaws constantly between being some of the most moving scenes in this show so far and then completely batshit stuff.
Yeah.
On another level. Now, I do feel like it's kind of classic Aaron to name episodes, in Latin, sometimes like quite specific sort of like phrasing from Bibles, etc. And this week, no different. I wasn't familiar with the word Shibboleth, which is the episode title this week. So I did have to Google it. And it is from the Bible. It's a Hebrew word. The definitions that I got was It's a word or saying used by parts of like a sect or belief that's usually regarded by other people as being kind of empty of meaning. Or it's a belief or custom that's not now considered to be important and correct as it was in the past. So, intriguing. But in this episode, it comes up very much with its reference from the Bible, which obviously is brought up by Jed Bartlett.
Of course.
Of course. I won't kind of linger too much on that because actually it's only used in a very short, sharp way. The previously on for this episode is once again just like people describing their jobs.
Yeah.
And is it wrong that I find this quite funny?
It is quite funny. It really is kind of very Avengers Assemble whenever they do this.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm not a child and I can remember, like, realistically at this point, I've watched over a season of this show. So, like, if I don't know who Donna Moss is...
Real flaw with the writing if we don't know who one of the leads is at
like,
this stage.
Aaron, like, come on, like, have a bit more faith in your team.
Yeah,
realistically.
Yeah. Or it's just quite camp and it's kind of like a Spice Girls-esque roll call.
Like a Charlie's Angels moment.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, to the Coast Guard.
Please.
We're in a harbour in San Diego. There's been an incident, Leigh. New character alert. John Russo from the INS. Ooh.
Oh.
We need some Mandarin translators. My guess is that this container ship that they're currently holding has people on, and those people probably speak Mandarin. We will come back to the drama on the high seas. But first we must away to the West Wing, because Sam, very importantly, is making fun of pilgrims.
Which I think is hugely important.
This is a great opener because Sam and Toby are kind of writing the president's Thanksgiving Day speech, and Sam's having a bit of fun with it and is basically like talking about the pilgrims and then being like, but wouldn't it be funny if they also solved crimes?
Rather than committing them on quite a large-scale human rights level. But we'll get to that later in the study session.
Good. I think my favourite line in this scene between him and Toby is Toby being like, we need to be serious, and Sam just saying, I think you're laughing on the inside. Very Toby Ziegler for me. I think Toby often laughs on the inside.
Yes.
We're in our casual wear.
We are, which I love to see.
Everyone is looking great.
Josh, especially.
Josh Lyman is really pulling the stops out here because he's in like a jeans and then like a burgundy long sleeve button down, but it's like slightly oversized in classic like millennium fashion. It's tucked into the jeans, which is stunning, and more men should do it. Again, unbuttoned quite low, but I don't hate it. And I do think that burgundy is his colour.
Truly, he's had his colours done in a big way.
It's really reminiscent of the like plaid shirt he wore in the flashback when he met Donna. It's
just giving like hot dad. Do you know what I mean? It's the dad that all the mums would have a crush on the school run kind of vibe.
Oh my God. God forbid interacting with Josh Lyman on a school run. He would be insufferable. He'd be like, hey, Lisa, how's soccer practice on Friday? I know. These kids, am I right?
Sorry to hear about the divorce.
Yeah, Lisa would be like, fuck me. In the back of my Volvo, Josh Lyman. Wow, I'm in a frisky mood today. Let's go for it. So, fun reference we get to the DAR. Shout out to Gilmore Girls.
We love a little DAR moment. I was really hoping that this was like, I so wanted this to be like a Gilmore Girls crossover episode where CJ Craig meets her match in Emily Gilmore at the Daughters of the American Revolution. Alas, it was not to be.
Imagine just like how fast the dialogue would be. I love that CJ is kind of like through this whole episode walking into rooms being like, I don't understand Thanksgiving. This is all of these kind of like traditions are weird. And I love that she's kind of my access point here.
Yes. And again, that she's just a very serious woman who's being asked to do ridiculous things throughout this episode, which I love. She refers to that by saying, I'm the Thanksgiving cruise director around here.
Yeah. Now, I will like to just roll back to a few episodes ago when we had a lot of people saying fellas. Fellas has entered the vernacular in a big way in this show.
For sure.
Donna's giving her fellas. Jed gives her fellas. I think Mrs. Landingham gives her fellas at some point. Don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to that. Anywho, it's good to know from the top of this episode that there's going to be an extended storyline that's going to be about CJ and some turkeys. And therefore, from this point forward, I prepared myself for like more Hepburn level comedy acting.
The fact that she can actually carry out a compelling scene with a turkey, with livestock, is, I don't know another actor who could do it.
There's nothing she can't do, Leigh. I can't. But thank God for the arrival of Bonnie with a clear setting of stakes before things got too crazy. Being like, yes, there's like a large amount of refugees that have like stowed away on this container ship from China to the United States. So to Monday morning, we're back at work. Josh is briefing Leo and confirmation that there are 83 Chinese people who were stowed away on this container ship and they're currently being held by the INS. Josh then is like, oh, Leo, like, what are your Thanksgiving plans? Which I think is a very cute check-in moment.
Especially post-divorce paper signing.
Yeah. And Leo's like, I'm with the first family.
The first family, did you say? I got all excited. I thought we were going to see the other Bartlett daughters at Thanksgiving. But alas, not hide nor hair even of Zoe. I
beg of Aaron Sorkin at some point in this show, I beg of you, give me one scene of Jed Bartlett on Thanksgiving with his family.
Oh, please.
I beg of you.
Please. I bet you he is an absolute fascist when it comes to the carving of
We've
red meat.
referenced this before.
Yeah.
I think when we were talking about Christmas last season, we were like, he fundamentally engages in no part of the food prep, but the carving is like his thing, which is so toxic, and I love it for him.
I am the patriarch.
Yeah, more on that later because our prediction very much came true. Anyway, so Josh is like, me and Sam and Toby are gonna like hang out and watch the football on Thanksgiving.
Because we're the boys. Me and the boys.
Can you just like not mention it to Jed? Because like low-key, like we really don't want to like have him explain the history of yams in Latin to us. And Leo's like, why would he invite you? Like, respectfully, like...
Disrespectfully, actually.
Yeah, actually, like, let's be frank.
Make no mistake, you and Jed are not close.
Yeah, and I really needed that from Leo in order to keep Josh humble. Now, the other news we get from Josh, which he passes on to CJ, is that Toby is gunning for giving a role to a lady called Josephine McGarry, who is Leo's sister, in the recess of something.
In
like Congress recess?
Yes.
Something's in recess.
Yeah, Congress is in recess.
Cool. And apparently, as we well know, Toby is very anti-school prayer. Very on brand for him. And that Josephine is like a real progressive in education. And so Toby's like, she's my gal. More on this later.
What's happening here is when Congress is in recess, the president can make appointments without them having to have senatorial approval, just to kind of like speed the process along. And so Trump is actually pushing for Congress to be in recess when he initially takes office so that he can just push through appointments.
Yeah. Okay.
Even though he's going to have the Senate majority, he wants to be able to push things through. And so that's just something that we can sit with and keep an eye on.
That's just another thing to add to the worry pile, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about turkeys. So some turkeys arrive and they're put in CJ's office over the weekend. CJ discovers these turkeys and Carol, Donna and CJ all just say the phrase, the turkeys came at different points in the conversation. And frankly, the concept of the turkeys being in CJ's office, the whole storyline about the president needing to pardon a single turkey every year. I have no notes on this, Leigh. This has to be real because it's too funny to be made up.
It is real. The president pardons a turkey every Thanksgiving. Yes, that is correct. I will send you videos of Obama pardoning turkeys.
Please, I would love nothing more. I am very happy to say that I come from a nation that has very odd traditions. Very odd traditions. We're an eclectic bunch over here in the UK.
Yeah.
However, asking the leader of your country to look a turkey in the eye and pardon it is cuckoo bananas.
I knew that this would send you. I was so excited for you to see this because I knew you wouldn't know whether it was real or not.
It's so stupid. It has to be real. Like, because if this was created in a writer's room, at some point someone would go, guys, this is too far. People aren't going to believe this. The turkeys are called Troy and Eric.
Love the High School Musical reference.
Like really funny. It's really funny. CJ just being like, I don't know why I'm being asked to do this. I actually have a master's degree from the University of California at Berkeley. And like, I'm here sorting out some fucking turkeys.
To which Donna just replies, that's a good school.
Love you, Donna.
Yes, thank you, Donna.
Love you, Donna. Donna's like, these are the two turkeys. Here's a bit of like interesting information about them. Troy doesn't like to be touched.
I would love to know how Donna discovered that Troy does not like to be touched.
Yeah, that would be a funny scene. The end of that scene is just CJ being like, okay, I'd like to be alone now, in her office with two loose turkeys. And she's like half taken off her coat. It's like kind of like in the crook of her arms. And she's just like looking at the turkeys. She's a comic genius. Let's away to Charlie's story for the week. Yes. Charlie's coming back into play. He's been we've been quite Charlie light.
Yes.
This series since the kind of opening 2 episodes. Now, he is shopping for a new carving knife for Jed. Wow.
A task from hell.
Poor Charlie. I can only imagine how detailed this is going to be. And again, let's come back to our prediction that Jed is in no way involved in the cooking at Thanksgiving, but carving is his art.
Yes.
He arrives, he has a knife to show to, like a carving set to show to Jed. He's thrilled. He's like, I've done it. I found the one. Mrs. Landingham literally just says, like not even looking up from her desk, I wouldn't get your hopes up, dear.
Mrs. Landingham calling Charlie dear really sent me.
Truly devastating delivery from her on that. Then Charlie goes into the Oval Office. Jed, for some reason, knows an encyclopedic amount about the particular knife brand.
Jed just being a classic man obsessed with knives. Like it's a knife, it cuts things. Please. I've had this, like, literally I will buy the second cheapest set and I will use them until I hurt myself by accident because they're so blunt. Then I will replace them. That is true. Maybe I should pay more attention to knives given that I put a knife through the palm of my hand twice last year.
Yeah.
Maybe Jed has a point.
Yeah, but I just don't need him to be like, the blade is this and then that, like, just go to a department store, just buy something decent.
The minute you're talking about the balance of a knife, I really just like spiritually check out of the conversation.
How much are you using a knife on a day-to-day basis, Jed? Because in my head, he's cutting a cucumber like Kendall Jenner. In my head, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think he uses a knife precisely once a year when he carves the turkey.
The line that sent me in that scene was just, as he's dismissed Charlie, just going, the Germans know how to make a knife, Charlie. Okay. Fine. Okay, boomer. Let's enter Toby and Josephine, the concept of Josephine.
Yes.
So I put in our shared doc, what even is a recess appointment, Leigh? You have since confirmed that to me. I feel like I know a little bit more now. I would love to be described as a very controversial woman, which is how Josephine is described.
For sure.
Because it's kind of like sexy controversial.
I would love my reputation to precede me.
Truly. Now, Jed, I think you can tell he has respect for Josephine, but you can tell his feathers are a little ruffled by her.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, she's a little All About Eve.
What does this mean?
So All About Eve was like a 1950s movie starring Bette Davis, where like it's about, and actually I think they did a West End revival of it as a play, and I want to say that it was Lily James and Gillian Anderson.
Oh, wow.
And I never got tickets. Oh, yeah.
How did I miss this?
But it's basically the concept of it is like Bette Davis, i.e. Gillian Anderson, is like a movie star, like really, really famous. And then this young fan, like who's obsessed with her, is like, I want to be like your assistant, and like infiltrates her life. And basically like maneuvers her way into her life and like kind of ruins her career and like steals her fame. And so I think what Jed is saying is like Leo's sister is a threat to Leo's credibility, respectability and career. Wow. I know. I was like, that's fucking shady. Also like what a deep cut reference to being like, I think she's fucking after his stardom for her own gain.
Yeah. Also, this is the second Leo's sister that we've heard about, because when Margaret was very stressed wrapping Leo's Christmas presents on his behalf last season, she was wrapping a gift for his sister Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea that like Leo has been harassed from birth by like a gaggle of sisters.
Yeah.
It's very the vibe of my dear departed father being like, I have 4 sisters. I have never known a day's peace.
Basically, yeah. Also, just like, here's to Elizabeth, Josephine, and Leopold.
Wow.
Wow. Siblings.
Just like in Boston with a drunk dad.
Oh my God.
The family lore.
The family lore is... Now, this is some... Okay. At some point, I will actually crack on and like really start getting through this, but I'm lost in reverie at the detail that Sorkin decides to go into with his characters.
Yeah.
As someone who loves a bit of world building, he's fleshing out this world, Leigh.
He is.
I know these people. I know them in my soul.
Okay, if it wasn't clear to the listener, me and Phoebe may have split a bottle of Malbec last night. I think that's where I know them in my soul came from.
The problem, Leigh and I went to go and see a theatre show last night, a musical, which was amazing. It's called Why Am I So Single? It's on in the West End. And essentially the kind of end feeling was just like the best love stories in our lives are our friendships. And so we drank lots of wine. I sobbed on Leigh. And I'm fine.
And my girlfriend kind of sat there next to us, kind of pleasantly confused.
Wow, feels kind of intense. And I was like, yes, Leigh is the love of my life. The main thing is that I'm fine.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving. Okay, news from San Diego. The refugees are Christian evangelicals fleeing persecution, is what we're told.
Ah, so the Chinese people on the ship are the pilgrims. I see what you're doing there, Aaron. It's a modern day allegory.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
Again, I bet he was well chuffed with that when he came up with that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So CJ's going to handle the press about the situation with the Chinese refugees and like who the people in the West Wing are going to be having meetings with about like what's going to happen essentially. And he's like, oh, it's been given to Josh and Sam. And then she's like, so we all know how successful that's going to be. Which I think is crazy.
Yeah, I cannot believe the shade from CJ about Josh and Sam. But also like, she's not wrong.
No, she's not incorrect.
Yeah. Also, like, why after the pilot is Josh being tasked with speaking to the Christians? It didn't go well last time. Like, why are we sending Tweedledum and Tweedledee to speak to the Christians with no supervision?
Yeah, I am concerned about this. Also, something else that's like, in terms of what we're offering Alison Janney in this episode is we've given her turkeys at the top. And then things just keep getting added. So the next thing is the press saying like, you're doing the turkey pardoning. Are you also leading the children in song when the president does his like Thanksgiving Day address?
And Alison Janney just does the best reaction where clearly this is like absolutely the first she's ever heard of it. But she just absolutely plays it off and says, yes, of course I will be leading them in song, for I am the press secretary.
Stunning. Now, Leigh. She's back. She was in the pilot episode, the first episode of this show.
Mary Marsh is back, bitch.
Mary Marsh is back, bitches. She's come for blood. If we remember, Mary Marsh and Reverend Caldwell?
That sounds right.
Were the people who were like, essentially said some deeply offensive comments to both Toby and Josh.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitic comments. Now they're back, so we can only imagine the success this conversation is going to have. Sam and Josh enter the Roosevelt room where they're meeting, and there's lots of like, good morning, good morning, good morning.
And to be fair, I would say they come in with a positive energy. They come in with kind of like an open spirit, despite our previous anti-Semitic experience.
And then Mary's like, the thing is that your government's slowing people down. Da.
And then Josh just says, okay, I guess we're done with good morning. Which I will now just be taking into my everyday life as a phrase.
It's a slam dunk of a comeback for me. Just like when someone's being really intense, being like, okay, I guess like we're going to be that way. It's brilliant. Now, Mary Marsh is the worst.
Correct.
The absolute worst. And like, she's so incandescent with rage at all like moments of her existence.
Yeah.
But what I will say is props to the actor coming in and playing Mary Marsh. She's doing a stunning job. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Also, like, it's such a realistic portrayal of like that type of woman.
Yeah, for sure. The Reverend comes in. I've got a lot of time for the Reverend in this episode. I think he's being pretty great.
Yeah.
So his point is, because I guess Sam and Josh are like, look, the INS are in charge of all of this. And basically they need to work out if the people that were on the container ship are here because of like genuine reasons of asylum. And the Reverend's like, look, would they have risked their lives to like buy their way into a container ship to like travel for months across the sea if they weren't like in danger and fleeing something?
Yeah.
Which I think is a valid comment to make. And I do think that I'm glad that this is kind of like being aired in this conversation.
Yes, for sure. And I think, you know, there is a debate to be had similarly about to what extent the pilgrims were truly actually like fleeing persecution, and to what extent they were more so just wanting to set up their own kind of theocracy and, you know, financially gain from moving to the New World and kind of setting up their own country. So it is an interesting way of having that conversation by kind of applying it to the present rather than just talking directly about the pilgrims from history.
Sure. Then Sam and Mary start fighting because there was a play put on where someone wrote Jesus is gay.
Yes.
And Sam was like, look, you know, when your people are protesting, that's fine. But someone basically called in like some sort of bomb threat, I want to say.
Yes. So we have a super helpful note from Christian who sends us lovely spoiler-free trivia about this. So the play Apostles that Sam mentions is likely based on the Terence McNally play Corpus Christi, which also portrayed Christ and his apostles as gay. And that play in real life did actually receive similar death threats.
Wow. It felt very close to the bone for someone to be like, you know, it's everyone's right to protest, but when violence is incited, you're nowhere to be seen. That felt all too familiar.
Yeah, it feels real in 2024 for sure.
Anyway, at this point, the Reverend's like, hey, Josh, can I just grab you for a minute? Because I feel like Mary and Sam are going to get us nowhere. They go out into the corridor and the Reverend's like, look, if we can keep these people in the States, I will pay, like my church will pay for the bail that would need to be paid for them to be here. Which actually is something quite nice and charitable.
We love a Christian with actual Christian values.
Some might say.
Love thy neighbor, etc. Thank you. Good night.
Then a perplexing interaction because Toby strides along this corridor. The Rev is like, good morning, Toby. Good morning, Reverend. You look determined. I am, sir. Good boy.
Good boy is crazy in a professional context.
Good boy to Toby Ziegler is wild. Like
crazy.
Because he's looked 55, I imagine, since he was 30.
I'm going to say since he was 13.
Oh, Lord. But why is Toby determined, Leigh? Toby is determined because he's meeting with some senator's staff to discuss Josephine McGarry. And safe to say, Toby's stance on school prayer is a real hot topic with these lads.
Yeah, for sure.
I chaotically in our shared document just put in all caps, how's that separation of church and state going, mate? When these men are getting very angry about it all. And Toby just says, can you explain to me slowly using small words and visual aids?
I love Toby when he's petty. I love nothing more than Toby when he's petty. I need to take more Toby energy into my life.
Honestly, because at one point he was like, the thing is that like I will win at this because I'm better than you guys.
Oh, it's so good.
And that is when one of the senator staff members pulls a brown envelope out of his briefcase.
It's never good to see. It's never good to see a kind of a photograph slid across a desk. It's never a good moment.
No, my stomach dropped to my feet. And turns out that it's actually a photograph that's in a local newspaper in the area where Josephine McGarry is a principal, where some high schoolers at a football game were doing like a prayer before the game and were arrested.
Yes.
And so it's like Josephine, some high schoolers, and like a police officer like putting handcuffs on them.
Yeah, boys in Letterman jackets being handcuffed while praying is not going to go down well.
Like, this is nightmare fuel for the Democrats.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this was like, now granted, I'm not as young as I once was. It's been a fair distance since my own high school days. But like, I do remember this being a hot button issue when I was in American high school. And I do remember that there were other students at my school who would kind of stage almost, I don't want to say like a protest prayer, but they would go out of their way to kind of, through their youth groups, organize to be like, we're going to make a point of making like a prayer circle in the morning at school as almost kind of like a demonstration that that was something that they were passionate about, was having school prayer like reinstated.
Yeah.
So it's by no means like an issue of 2001. I think it's still very active today.
For sure. It's really interesting. Toby takes this photo to Leo and is like, I need to tell you about this. And Leo's basically like, bitch, I told you, she's chaos. Like, we can't be doing this. This is too out there for what we're trying to do right now. Like, the White House is like chaotic enough without bringing someone who's so considered to be so radical in.
Yeah.
Who's also my sister. He calls in Margaret.
Who's wearing a lovely little silver number today.
Like a silver, like, satin skirt suit.
Yeah. Gorge.
She looks stunning.
The silver really sets off her red hair.
Yeah. And he's like, call my sister. And then we finish that scene with just him picking up the phone and being like, hey, Joe.
Yeah. Because I kind of got the sense like earlier in the app that they might be estranged. Whereas this, I was like, oh no, you actually have like a cute sibling relationship. And I found that quite moving, even though they might have differences of opinion and he might find her annoying. He's still her brother.
He's still a bro.
Yeah.
To Wednesday, lest we forget, this is Turkey Pardoning Day, Leigh. I would like us to, I obviously chaotically typed out this interaction between CJ, Donna, and Josh. Would you like to be CJ, Josh, or Donna?
I will be the chorus of Josh and Donna to your CJ today.
Okay, amazing. This is CJ to Donna. Can I borrow you just for a minute?
Hey, CJ.
You know, Josh, I'd love to stand around and talk, but I have a turkey pardoning in 5 minutes.
I thought that was tomorrow.
No, tomorrow's the singing.
You're singing?
I'm leading the children in song.
Excellent.
Yes, I need Donna for a moment.
You need help with the song?
No, I don't need help with the song.
The INS guy will be here in a minute. What do you need?
I need help with the song.
Isn't it the usual song?
There's a usual song.
We gather together.
That's the song?
It's the usual song.
So you know it.
Everybody knows it. I
don't know it.
Didn't you go to elementary school?
I feel like I've never felt more aligned with CJ. Like, what? Yeah, I'm baffled. I love that she's going to have to go and learn a song.
Yeah, obsessed.
We don't deserve her.
I will say, I love that we're getting so many more girlies with girlies scenes. Like
the
a
two-handers
between the women. I love to see it because they were very few and far between in season 1. And most of them were kind of like there was quite unspoken animosity between Mandy and CJ. And then other than that, we didn't really get any two female characters in conversation with each other. Whereas now we've got so much more happening in that realm, which I love.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was the way that Mandy was written. It all got quite catty.
Yeah.
Now, back to CJ and the turkeys. She goes back into her office because she needs to decide which turkey she's pardoning. Alison Janney performs a 3-hander where 2 of her scene partners are turkeys.
Live animals.
And she pulls it off with such aplomb, you know?
She could be having a scene partner with humans. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Troy, I want you to know it was neck and neck, but I'm giving it to Eric. You were in it right to the end, but it's the clapping thing you've got going on. I'll tell you what's of some concern to me is that I've been talking out loud this whole time. That's very unsettling.
We don't deserve her.
The scene ends with Donna coming in and the 2 of them trying to like move the turkeys to like get them to where they need to be. And I just feel like a good day was had on set by all.
Yeah, truly.
I think there would have been a lot of bloopers that day. A good one for the rap party, you know? So very briefly going to touch base with the refugee story again. So Jed's plan in terms of finding out like if the refugees are in fact here on grounds of religious persecution.
Yeah.
Is that he's like, I love the Bible. And so
we know, Jed. We know.
Jed. Famously, we know. And so he's like, if they're feigning their faith, like, let's quiz them on their religion. Which is a heavy storyline and crazy.
Intense, yeah.
So he's like, I'm going to invite one of them to come and speak with me, the President of the United States, in my very busy schedule. And I'm going to decide whether or not he's a true Christian. Crazy.
It's very kind of Sword in the Stone.
Leigh. Also, the fact that this conversation is sandwiched in between Jed rejecting another carving knife from Charlie.
Yeah.
And also like knowing an uncommon amount about that knife, and then also pardoning a turkey. Shall we meet Josephine?
Of course, Leo has a scrappy sister.
She comes in and like her opening line is, I don't think I need to tell you that I'm not going to shrink from a fight. Wow. And the dialogue here was so phenomenally written because Joe and Leo have this like amazing tete-a-tete where they are arguing politically as two people who don't see eye to eye.
Yes.
Like really, really verbose, amazing, fabulous orators. But there's this undercurrent of sibling rivalry.
It's so good. It's such a different energy than we've ever seen Leo have because we've never really seen him in, other than with Jed, where they obviously have like quite a close relationship. We've never really seen him like have a true conversation with a peer.
No.
It's always been this kind of like avuncular, kind of like grandfatherly energy.
Yes. Yeah. He's always been the elder. You know what I mean?
The elder statesman, if you will.
And basically what Leo says is he's like, I recognize the name of this photographer because I've met him and he said that he like owes his career to you. And he's taken this photograph of you at this high school arrest. So you staged this photo.
You called the photographer.
Yeah.
And then he just says this amazing line where he says, we don't strut ever. And it's the most phenomenal takedown.
It really is. And it's just like, it's such a full stop moment. And then he just like hands her the paperwork that's like her being like,
I'm
having
going to
like step down.
my candidacy.
Yeah. A moment of conjecture. Do we think that Joe and Jenny clashed in a big way?
100%. I think she's his younger sister who was always getting into trouble, always getting into scrapes. And he was the one who had to kind of like go and rescue her or go and speak to her teacher or, you know, because his parents were like, I think he was kind of parentified as the big brother because obviously we know there was like a chaotic parental situation going on. And that therefore he's like got a slight energy of like, you robbed me of my childhood.
I just think that there was perhaps Thanksgivings where Joe was there with her kids and Jenny was like, you know, I hate the way that your sister speaks to me.
Because Jenny came across as kind of quite an upper class, kind of waspy woman.
I think there's a potential that like her and Leo met because they were like intellectual equals. Like perhaps they like met through work in politics. But I do feel like Jenny came from a different social class.
Yes. And therefore her and Josephine clashed.
Wow, Leigh, we're amazing. Like, what a hot take. We should shut the fuck up. Wow, we chat such utter shit. Okay, cool. Now, Josephine leaves. Toby comes in and he is very sadly.
I was emotionally broken by this.
So Toby was like, look, I understand. Josephine McGarry, we can't. It's not the right choice. It's not the right fit. But like, I'm not going to give up on this school prayer thing. Because he was like, you know, it's a reason for the kids at recess to pick on the kid that doesn't join in. It's another way of making kids different from other kids.
I unfortunately am unable to emotionally cope with the thought of Toby as a vulnerable fourth grader who is being made fun of for his faith because he's not joining in with the morning prayer at school.
I know. And then there's this like extended moment of eye contact between Toby and Leo. And then Leo just says, what did they do to you?
Oh.
And we don't get the answer because Ginger pops in through the door. We never
in a stunning
hear.
green suit, but I can't even talk about
once
fashion.
I do need her to stop popping through doorways looking so fantastic. It's unacceptable and very distracting. But like, what did they do to Toby? And if in our heads, our storyline of him being like a military kid is true, it's like he's already othered in that, like, they're like, you know, you're new in our school. And he like practices a different faith to Christianity.
I can't. Wow.
And he was probably bald from the age of 8.
Yeah.
Wearing suits and reading Leo Tolstoy.
Already thinning at 16. We all knew that kid.
Oh, Toby. We should go and meet one of the refugees with Jed Bartlett. So we're going to meet a very nice chemistry professor from China.
Yes.
And Jed is actually less intense than I thought he was going to be about this pop quiz.
Yeah.
He's like, can you name any of Jesus's apostles? If you can't, that's no problem. I usually can't remember the names of my kids.
Except Zoe, who I love, who's my favorite.
And this interaction ends with the chemistry professor giving Jed a very Jed-esque speech about faith.
And then we get this kind of lovely moment of like brotherhood of being like, we're actually men who are cut from the same cloth. Wow, huge.
Wow, yeah. And Jed's like, I am satisfied. You are a true Christian.
A true believer.
Yeah. And then there's a crazy moment where Jed and Leo, I think, plan to break all of the 83 refugees out of the INS detention facility.
Yeah, they just are kind of like, well, if the Coast Guard happened to just walk away, then it wouldn't be our problem, would it? Which I actually think is like an amazing plan.
Yeah. I also just like, you know what, like so much of, I guess the most recent part of the Bartlett administration has been like quite boring and annoying politics and they can't get anywhere. Like at the end of the day, if you're the president and you want to do something, you should just like, you should get to do a nice thing once in a while.
If we should happen to leave the doors unlocked and maybe perhaps the Red Cross just happens to swing by.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this one to Jed.
Yeah.
It's a wild decision, but a nice end to that storyline. And it's Thanksgiving morning, Leigh. It's Thanksgiving in the White House. And finally, on the morning of Thanksgiving, CJ is finally invited to join the lads to watch the football.
Thank God. I do love that she's clearly been like waiting. She's been aware of the plan. And she says, it's about damn time you asked me. I've been sitting here for 2 weeks turning down all kinds of, frankly, very glamorous invitations from people I like a lot more than you. You can't just ask a girl last minute.
Well, if you can't come.
No, I can come.
Good.
Should I bring anything?
Do you know how you cook food? Wow, Toby.
Please.
Come on.
She's like your best friend.
Like,
let's be real about
so
this.
Long. Also, like, Andy left a while ago. You should know how to cook. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Now, we're returning to the storyline of CJ and the turkey pardoning, because as we remember, famously, there were 2 turkeys and only one turkey can be pardoned. So the turkey handler, who's like this high schooler, arrives to take back the rejected turkey to be killed. And CJ's like, no, I have bonded with this turkey and it must be saved.
Yeah.
In her own words, I chose Eric because Troy doesn't like to be touched, which surely we're not going to execute him for.
Consent is key.
So she's basically taking this problem to the president.
Yeah.
Jed is in the Oval Office and pops his head through to Mrs. Landingham. And Mrs. Landingham just chastises him for not knowing how to use the intercom, which is actually very cute. And I enjoyed that. And I haven't had enough Mrs. Landingham this season.
Yeah, and love her being like, if you need help, I can send in one of the 4th graders to show you how to use it.
Unbelievable. Then we just get completely sideswiped.
Completely devastated and savaged spiritually and emotionally by a scene I did not see coming.
Not in a million years. The conclusion of Charlie's truly frivolous carving knife storyline
actually kind of turns into a moment of Jed Bartlett being like, I see you as my son.
Yeah. First of all, like, Charlie arrives with his knife box, being like, Mr. President. And Bartlett goes, what you got, Charles? And I would just like to say that I'm a big fan of what you got, Charles. Would you like to be Charlie or Bartlett, Leigh?
I will be Bartlett today.
Okay. So Charlie is done with the knife thing. And he's just very respectfully trying to tell Jed this.
Yeah.
Cue Leigh and I bursting into tears. Okay, Mr. President, I say this with all possible respect, but each of these knives, cuts meat. Like, why is it important?
Because it's something we pass on, something with a history, so we can say my father gave this to me and his father gave it to him, and now I'm giving it to you.
Okay, sir, well, if that's true, then why don't you already have one?
I do have one.
Why do you need a new one? Stay with me, Leigh.
Because I'm giving mine away.
To who?
Whom?
To whom?
Funny you should ask, Charlie. My father gave this to me and his father gave it to him, and now I'm giving it to you. Take a look. The fully tapered bolster allows for sharpening the entire edge of the blade.
It says PR. I thought I knew them all, but I don't recognize the manufacturer.
And this is where we leave reality entirely.
It's a crazy backstory. Please, Leigh.
A backstory for the knife we didn't know we were going to get.
Christ.
Yes, these were made for my family by a Boston silversmith named Paul Revere. I'm proud of you, Charlie. I'm both laughing and crying. That is Paul Revere of the British are coming fame.
Yeah, like literally like an incredibly famous individual in American history.
Of cobblers and tinsmiths.
And also just like classic Bartlett being like, I'm proud of you, Charlie, but like, let me tell you once more how I'm a Nepo baby. So friend of the pod, Christian, sums this up quite nicely by being like, so Paul Revere was a courier soldier and he was a leader in the Sons of Liberty during the American Revolution. And of course, a close personal friend of the Bartlett family. Honestly, and they just like look at each other as two men, and like Bartlett hands him the box.
Oh.
Leigh wrote something in the shared doc that when I read it, Leigh, I cried reading it.
Because Jed represents America's past, and Charlie is America's future. So he's passing on the American tradition to Charlie.
It's so beautiful. But then the episode ends in such a weird way.
It's a real whiplash.
Just like me being like, wow, this is like Jed looking at this young man who loves his daughter and being like, you don't have like a father and a mother, but like you have a family and it's my family. And then CJ comes in and we have this interaction. Would you like to remain Bartlett, Leigh?
I'll remain Bartlett. Yes, I'll remain in my role of Jed Bartlett.
Yeah. Mr. President?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry to ask you this, sir, but
Not too late to stop yourself.
I need you to pardon a turkey.
I already pardoned a turkey.
I need you to pardon another one.
Didn't I do it right?
You did it great, but I need you to come out here and pardon another one.
Aren't I going to get a reputation of being soft on turkeys?
Sir, can you just come out here and get this over?
No, I'm not going to. CJ, what the hell is going on?
They sent me 2 turkeys. The more photo-friendly of the 2 gets a presidential pardon and a full life at a children's zoo, and the runner-up gets eaten.
If the Oscars were like that, I'd watch. Oh, wow.
No time to revel in the heartwarming moment with Charlie. We have to pardon another turkey. But we also have to hoodwink a high schooler called Morton, who is the designated turkey handler.
Morton is a tough name.
Yeah. Jed goes out to meet Morton, and he goes, "Hey, Morton." And Morton just goes, "Wow." And Jed says, "Well said." And I died. I was dead at that. Wow.
Yeah, I will just say we had quite a few shots looking kind of from the perspective of POTUS's desk. And I will say it's incredibly rough on the other Bartlett daughters that Zoe is the only Bartlett daughter that has a framed photo on his desk.
She has 2. So there's a framed photo of Abby. Then there's like a childhood photo of Zoe. And there's a photo of Bartlett and Zoe on what I imagine is like the inauguration ball, because she's like in like a little white gown and he's in a tux. Not a look in for the other Bartlett daughters or his grandchildren.
Oh my God, that is so true.
Wild. They're all in therapy, aren't they? About Zoe being the favorite.
They are. Yes. Yeah. I also feel robbed that we do not get to see CJ leading the children in song at the end of the episode. We can only hear the children sing.
Leigh, Alison gave us the jackal. Okay, we can't ask too much of Alison. Do you feel like there's a point where she was like, guys, I'm not doing that. However, we do close out the episode with like Jed like talking, but like in the background is like a children's choir, and it's frankly too much for me.
It's too much, yeah.
But the turkey is pardoned. The refugees have escaped. Happy Thanksgiving,
both
everyone.
Troy and Eric get to live.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Wow. Yeah, to the quick fires.
Best fashion, Fi.
I think I agree with you that it's Josh's casual Sunday outfit.
For sure.
It's gorgeous. The burgundy. I'd like to see more of casual Josh.
Agreed.
I would like to say an honourable mention to our EAs, Margaret in silver, Ginger in green.
Couldn't agree more, yes.
What could a British or Irish politician never get away with?
A photo op with a live animal.
Truly. Wow. I mean, British politicians struggle enough with inanimate objects.
Especially poultry.
Yeah, sure. Like, quite famously flighty.
Yeah.
How long till guns, abortion, free speech, religion, our kind of big ticket items came up? I mean, the return of Mary Marsh.
Huge. A moment for the fans.
A moment for the fans of Mary Marsh. And high schoolers praying in handcuffs.
Yeah, huge.
Big, huge this week. Best writerly moment, there were many.
Okay, I guess we're done with Good Morning.
I will say that was stunning, and also Josh's delivery, bang on. I would like to say my honourable mentions go to, from Sam Seaborn, I think you're laughing on the inside. And of course, Jed Bartlett saying, aren't I going to get a reputation for being soft on turkeys?
That was excellent. I loved that.
Man, I feel like a man.
I'm not wild about the woman.
Said every man about me ever.
That is not true. You're a big hit with the boys. Let's not pretend otherwise.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's a shame I hate men. Not all men, just most of them. My favourite Man, I feel like a man was, can you explain to me slowly using small words and visual aids?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, just Toby being the petty bitch that we love. And the moment that made you proudest to be an American.
These were made for my family by a Boston silversmith named Paul Revere.
Yeah. I think for me, it was like the conclusion of the episode, and like as Jed's going outside to watch the children's choir, he like turns to Leo and he's like, this is a great job.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've lost sight of that in modern times.
We truly have. Yeah.
Wow, Leigh, what an ep.
It was huge. Yeah, it was huge.
I would like to add one more quick fire.
Yeah.
Which is this week. Leigh, what are you thankful for?
Oh, way to hit me sideways and call me Susan. This year, I am thankful for my house. I love where I live. And I am thankful for my girlfriend, who puts up with, frankly, quite a lot.
Two great big hitters, stunning. I am thankful. I mean, I teed up this question, so I've already prepared mine, and they're both massive teacher's pet answers. So I am thankful for the fact that we get to do this.
Yeah.
Me and you. Like, this podcast has been such a huge, I don't know, anchor for me since we started it. So I love getting to do something creative and silly with my bestest pal. And I'm also really thankful to all of the listeners who, for some reason, tune in and listen to our wild musings. Guy, I'm so thankful to you because who knows why you think we're the gals you should be coming to for hot takes.
Yeah, no, we're so thankful that our listeners are so lovely, and it's so nice that people are enjoying this wild passion project that we decided to really invest in.
I feel like I've got like a whole new group of friends. So
Yeah.
I hope you're all having a nice, happy holiday time.
Yeah.
Wherever you are and whoever you're with.
To make quite a wild gear shift.
Please. It's a tradition. It's a Sorkin tradition. Whiplash me.
We're going to dive into what even is Thanksgiving.
Okay, wow. Yeah, take me there, Leigh.
So, Christopher Columbus, 1492. From then on.
Wow. We're starting with Christopher Columbus.
We are, yes. Obviously, not a great guy, not a fave, not a podcast fave, but that's something for another time. From that point on, Spain kind of dominates the race to colonize the Americas. In 1587, 115 English settlers arrive on Roanoke Island, which is off the coast of present-day North Carolina. And they are the first permanent English outpost in the New World.
Okay.
They were Sir Walter Raleigh, the kind of boy toy of Elizabeth I. No, he wasn't over, but it was kind of his passion project, if you will.
To send them over.
Out. It was his second attempt to kind of colonize North Carolina.
Cool.
And this was the first time that it included civilians and kind of women and children.
Wow. Okay,
rather than just sending out kind of military men. Now, the first kind of great mystery of the United States as it came to be is that the governor of the Roanoke colony in late 1587 goes back to England to kind of gather fresh supplies. He leaves behind his wife, his daughter, and his infant granddaughter, Virginia Dare, who is the first English child born in the Americas.
Cool.
Now, while he's back in England, war breaks out between England and Spain.
Classic.
The classic kind of like, I may have the body of the woman, but I have the heart of a man. That whole speech from Elizabeth I, Spanish Armada, etc.
Here's a moment for Kate Blanchett. We love you.
Oh my God, what a film. Wow, huge. The point being, she then kind of commandeers all vessels to fight the Spanish Armada. So John White...
So he can't go home.
Gets stuck.
He can't go back to his family.
For 3 years, because his vessel gets commandeered.
For 3 years?
For 3 years. And when he finally returns to Roanoke, there is not a trace of the colony to be found.
What?
Yeah. Crazy. So all there is just a single word carved into a wooden post, which reads Croatoan. But that was an island south of Roanoke where a Native American tribe of the same name lived at the time. So there's a couple of theories as to what happened here. The colonists may have been killed or abducted, or they tried to sail back to England and got lost at sea. Or they were killed by Spanish colonists coming up from Florida. Or they moved inland and were kind of absorbed into a friendly Native American tribe.
Wow, what a mystery.
But yeah, it's like never been solved. Some archaeologists have found, in literally the last couple of years, some artifacts that seem to indicate that it's possible that they did move inland. But that has never been fully proven. I just thought that was an interesting historical tidbit.
Yeah, thank you. I also just would love the idea that he left and everyone was like, fucking thank God. Should we just go and see if we can beg favor of the people whose country we're in?
Yeah.
And see if we could be any help to them.
Yeah.
And his wife was just like, wow, I'm so fine without him. In fact, I've fallen in love with another man.
Yeah, truly. So then we come to 1606, when King James I granted a charter for a new venture, which was the Virginia Company. Now, at the time, Virginia was the English name for the entire east coast of North America, north of Florida, which was obviously named for, again, Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen.
Yeah, but she banged.
For sure. Banged. The aforementioned Sir Walter Raleigh, please. Please.
Also, Dudley, come on. Dudley got some.
Oh, absolutely. One of the greatest PR spins that has ever been spun.
Honestly.
Is the idea that she was a virgin.
Icon, legend.
Yeah.
Hot bitch.
Truly.
Sorry, I stopped talking about Elizabeth I now.
We need to separate Elizabeth and Kate Blanchett in our minds. The one you have a crush on is Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, me and everyone else on this planet. Woof. Continue.
Now, the Virginia Company planned to kind of search for gold and silver, as well as a river route to the Pacific Ocean that would allow them to commence trade with Asia. Because they at the time did not understand how wide the American landmass actually is. So they thought they would kind of much more easily be able to get themselves round the other side of the world through America. And then this kind of Jamestown colony, it's a deeply kind of messy history in that it is the Jamestown history is kind of where the Disney film Pocahontas comes from.
Okay. That's literally all the context I have that we're working with, by the way.
Yeah. And she was a real historical figure who did marry one of the colonists. But obviously the way that the history is portrayed in the Disney film is a deeply sanitized version of that history.
Yeah.
And although the real life Pocahontas' marriage to John Rolfe, who was a colonist and tobacco planter, although that did for a time kind of cement a treaty between the local Native Americans and the Jamestown colony, that kind of quite quickly fell apart, especially because Pocahontas actually died on a trip to England in 1617. And it really strained the kind of fragile peace between the settlers and the Native Americans. And quite rightly, the Native American tribe local to that area was the Algonquin, and they, of course, became deeply angry and threatened by the colonists' kind of insatiable need to expand the colony and claim more and more land. And so they continued to kind of mount a resistance, but the colony continued to grow stronger. And they were forced to sign a peace treaty, which ceded most of their land and forced them to pay an annual tribute to the colonial governor. Which brings us to kind of the Thanksgiving story. Maya Salam, writing for the New York Times, writes, Thanksgiving facts and Thanksgiving myths have been blended together for years like so much gravy and mashed potatoes, and separating them is just as complicated. And I would highly recommend, if anyone is interested in kind of digging through more so what I'm about to speak about, there's a fascinating book called Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong, by James W. Lowen, who's a sociologist. And a lot of kind of what I'm going to speak about is based off of his writing. But basically, the classic Thanksgiving story is, so we have Jamestown. Jamestown has existed. It's been there for a while. And then the Mayflower brings over the Pilgrims from Plymouth, England, in 1620. Now, this is kind of the classic story of like what you would be taught in like American elementary school about like what Thanksgiving is that nearly 100 passengers on the Mayflower, including men, women, and children from England and the city of Leiden in Holland. So the Pilgrims initially were a group that they didn't want to worship as part of the Church of England because they thought that worshiping kind of the crown was a distraction from worshiping God. And so, but at the time, people who did not worship at the Church of England were persecuted in England. That is true. And so some of them had already gone to Leiden in Holland, where they did have religious freedom to worship as they chose. So it's a kind of combination of pilgrims who were still in England and those who'd already gone to the Netherlands and then kind of came and met them at the Mayflower. And it's divided between saints and strangers. The saints obviously being the pilgrims who were, although they didn't refer to themselves as pilgrims at the time, they referred to themselves as separatists who wanted to separate from the Church of England. And then strangers, which were kind of tradesmen of all different backgrounds who were seeking a new life and kind of financial opportunity. Now, when the Pilgrims had originally gone to the Netherlands, they were free to worship as they liked, but they had quite difficult lives as migrants, not speaking the language. They could only get difficult, low-paid jobs. And they were also concerned that their children were going to be drawn away by the kind of more relaxed culture in Holland. And so that's why they wanted to set up their own kind of religious theocracy in the New World. So the Mayflower was a cargo ship, no more than 100 feet long and 24 feet wide, smaller than the size of a penalty box on a football field.
What?
Yeah, crazy. And also on board were the crew, servants, unaccompanied orphan children, dogs, cats, and birds.
Wow, that's a stinky ship.
Horrifying. Quite a few people died on the way there because it was a kind of several month journey. They disembarked in Plymouth, Massachusetts, what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts, and they set up a colony. And the classic Thanksgiving story is that in 1621, they celebrated their first successful harvest with a 3-day gathering that was attended by members of the Wampanoag tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to a historical figure called Tisquantum, who was also known as Squanto. And he served as kind of a translator between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe, and worked as kind of like a diplomat in ways, and helped facilitate trade between the Pilgrims and the local Native Americans, and taught them kind of like how to plant corn and how to grow crops in that particular region. Now, his story is much more complicated than what is taught in schools, because he was only able to do that. The only reason why he understood English and was able to act as a translator was because he was captured by the English in 1614, so 7 years previously, and sold into slavery in Spain.
Right.
And then ended up spending several years in England as a result, where he learned English. And he managed to make his way back to the Americas in 1619, having been freed from slavery, only to find that his whole tribe had been wiped out by smallpox.
Oh, I was really worried you were going to say that.
And he was the sole survivor of his village.
Oh, wow.
And the village where the Pilgrims kind of set up camp was already a village with clear fields and a spring when the Pilgrims found it. And that's because the entire inhabitants had been Squanto's tribe that had been completely wiped out. So he was essentially teaching these people how to live on his land when all of his people were gone.
Wow.
And obviously, it's really important to say that Native Americans did not, prior to European arrival in the Americas, Native Americans didn't die from diseases like smallpox, these kind of transmitted diseases that are to do with kind of public hygiene. That's how they get spread. Because at the time, Native American people had much better hygiene practices than the European settlers who were coming over. Native American people in general, obviously it's like very specific to the particular Native American tribes, and you know, practices vary from group to group, but they had practices for regular bathing, they had practices for brushing their teeth and things like this. And so the European settlers were really quite disgusting to Native Americans as far as they were concerned. Like, they smelled bad. They were like, why are you not washing yourselves? But of course, you know, at the time it was considered kind of sinful from a European perspective to like take off your clothes, even to wash.
Okay.
And likely, even Squanto's name, Tisquantum, was not the name that he was given at birth. It actually, in that region, Tisquantum referred to rage, specifically kind of like spiritual rage, kind of from God, or from the kind of heart of Native American religious beliefs. So when he introduced himself with that name to the Pilgrims, it was almost like saying, "Hi, I'm the wrath of God."
Wow.
Tisquantum was kind of in this situation where for survival he helped the Pilgrims because he was mistrusted by the other tribes, because he wouldn't have identified himself as a Native American. He would have identified specifically with his own tribe. And so he was at the time kind of a captive of one of the other tribes, and he was quite mistrusted by them because he had all of this kind of experience of living in other places. And so he decided that his best plan was to make himself indispensable to the Pilgrims, basically, as the best way to survive. And we also need to be aware that in terms of the kind of Wampanoag tribe making the call to be peaceful with the settlers, with specifically the Pilgrims, and allowing them to stay long term. The political leaders within that tribe at the time, they made a very tactical decision. It's not like they just let their land become overrun by this group. It was that they were concerned about aggression from other tribes trying to take their territory, because not just Tisquantum's tribe, but the other local tribes in the area had been so horribly affected by the diseases brought by European settlers that they were trying to gain an ally, basically, in the area. And so I think there is this kind of idea that they didn't have political acumen, and that was one of the reasons why they were overrun so quickly by the Pilgrims arriving, and the Pilgrims having some kind of superior leadership skills, when that's not the case at all. It was a very tactical decision that was made to try and form an allyship and allow these settlers to stay in the local area. The Wampanoag tribe lost up to 75% of its people, while a nearby enemy tribe had not. And so they needed to kind of shore up some support in their area. And as James W. Lowen writes in the book that I mentioned earlier, within 3 years, the plague wiped out between 90 to 96% of the inhabitants of coastal New England. Native societies were devastated. Only the 20th person was scarce left alive, wrote Robert Cushman, an English eyewitness, recording the death rate unknown in all previous human experience.
Wow.
The Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of the American Indian, calls the story of the first Thanksgiving as portrayed as a friendly harvest celebration where pilgrims and generic nameless Indians came together to eat and give thanks, a myth, incomplete and inaccurate. It wasn't until the 1830s that this event was referred to as the first Thanksgiving. Claiming it was the first Thanksgiving isn't right, because the Wampanoag tribe practiced daily and seasonal traditions of giving thanks long before any encounter with English settlers and the formation of Thanksgiving as a national holiday. And it wasn't made an official holiday in the United States as it came to be until 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln declared it as a way to improve relations between the northern and southern states, as well as the US tribal nations in the aftermath of the Civil War. Because also in that kind of a maelstrom of chaos of the Civil War, a year prior in 1862, corrupt federal agents kept the Dakota Sioux from receiving food and provisions. And on the brink of death from starvation, the tribe fought back, leading to the Dakota War of 1862. And President Lincoln had ordered 38 Dakota men to hanging, and therefore felt that Thanksgiving was an opportunity to build a bridge between Native Americans and the government.
Wow.
Dr. Kelly Mosteller, director of Citizen Potawatomi Nation's Cultural Heritage Center, says it was propaganda. It was to try and build this event so that you could have a deeper narrative about community building and coming together in shared brotherhood and unity. We're not going to acknowledge the Mayflower and the Pilgrims because it's holding up this false moment of friendship and completely disregards the genocide and the mass land theft and the brutality that all Native peoples experience.
Wow.
It's also not necessarily entirely true that the Pilgrims came for religious freedom, as they had religious freedom in Holland. Also, there is a story that is told that the Pilgrims intended to originally go to where the Jamestown colony was, but were unable to make landfall because of storms. But there is a critique of that telling of history that the Pilgrims purposefully landed quite far away in New England because they wanted to be able to establish an entirely separate religious theocracy from the Jamestown colony.
Oh, it's a meaty bit of history, isn't it? Yes,
and one of the also kind of key pieces of information about where this kind of classic cozy Thanksgiving story comes from is that in the 1890s, America was becoming an industrial power with the Industrial Revolution. There was a rise in nationalism, and suddenly there's all of these European migrants pouring into the United States of lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and Protestant Americans who had massacred Indigenous people feared that their definition of what it meant to be American was going to be overrun by these
Right.
new non-English speaking immigrants. And so they created this story of what it truly is to be American and implemented this kind of story of Thanksgiving to define what Americanism is to these new people who were arriving. And so this kind of story of unity and togetherness is actually being told as a way of separating the original colonists from these new, poor, non-English speaking European immigrants that were arriving in the 1890s.
Once again, a great spin.
Yeah. And I think it goes without saying that like the history of Native American cultural identity and the history of what happened to Native Americans kind of from the point of the Pilgrims arriving onwards is just an absolutely heartbreaking and devastating and tragic story.
Yeah.
After the first Thanksgiving, the Wampanoag tribe, who it's kind of, you know, celebrated that they were at this first Thanksgiving, they were almost completely wiped out by a 14-month conflict with the colony beginning in 1675. And I'll turn to Sean Sherman, writing for Time magazine. He's the author of the Sioux Chef's Indigenous Kitchen. And I thought it was really important to just like actually quote directly from a Native American voice, even though it is from a different region of the country and a different tribe to the Wampanoag tribe. My great-grandfather helped fight off General Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn alongside other Lakota and Cheyenne, not even 100 years before my birth. I think about my great-grandfather's lifetime, being born in the 1850s, towards the end of the genocides that began in the 1600s across America, and stretching into the subtle but still damaging years of assimilation efforts we have endured since. He saw escalating conflicts between Lakota life as he knew it and the ever-emerging immigrants from the East. He witnessed the disappearance of the bison, the loss of the sacred Back Hills, the many broken promises made by the US, along with the atrocities like the Sand Creek and the Wounded Knee massacres. He saw his children attend boarding schools where they had their hair forcibly cut and were punished for speaking their languages. I wonder what he thought about the Thanksgiving story. But I do not wonder about this. Thanksgiving really has nothing to do with Native Americans and everything to do with the old, but not the oldest guard, conjuring a lie of the first peoples welcoming the settlers to bolster their false authority over what makes a real American. Remember, only in 1924 were the Native Americans allowed to become citizens of the United States, and it took decades more for all states to permit us to vote. It is a story of supposed unity, drained of the bloodshed and built for the sake of division. For years, especially as the head of a company that focuses on Indigenous foods, I have explored Native foods. It has given me and can give us all a deeper understanding of the land we stand on. It's exciting to reconnect with nature around us. As Americans, we spend hours outdoors collecting foods like morels, ramps, wild ginger, chokeberries, wild plums, crab apples, cactus fruit, pawpaws, manzanita, berries, cattails, maple, wild rice, not the black stuff from California, which is a modified and completely different version of the true wild rice growing around the Great Lakes region, cedar, rose hips, hickory, acorns, and walnuts. We can work with native growers producing heirloom beans, squash and pumpkins, and native corn varieties, all coming in many shapes, sizes, and colors. We can have our feasts, including dishes like cedar braised rabbit, sunchokes with sumac, pine stewed venison, smoked turkey with chestnuts, wild rice and foraged mushrooms, native squash with maple, smoked salmon and wild teas. No matter where you are in North America, you are on Indigenous land. And so on this holiday, and any day really, I urge people to explore a deeper connection with what are called American foods by understanding true Native American histories and begin using what grows naturally around us and to support Native American growers. There is no need to make Thanksgiving about a false past. It is so much better when it celebrates the beauty of the present.
How well written.
Yeah, I just thought that was a gorgeous thing that is actionable for us all to think about on a day like Thanksgiving. And I'll put on the Patreon for our patrons a link to some Native American recipes that you can try and you can honor, which might be nice to kind of bring into your Thanksgiving traditions.
I love that.
Yeah. Of course, you know, Thanksgiving Day can be a time of grief for many Native Americans. Many Native Americans gather at Coles Hill near Plymouth Rock on Thanksgiving Day for a national day of mourning, which was started in 1970 when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts invited Wamsutta Frank James to address the public on behalf of the Wampanoag people, only for him to be uninvited from the event when the organizers learned that his speech included highlighting the death and broken promises at the hand of settlers, colonial powers, and the United States, which prompted the kind of creation of the event of the National Day of Mourning.
Wow. Yikes.
And so, many Native Americans have chosen to reject the Thanksgiving holiday in its entirety. Many others choose to kind of embrace the positive messages of the day, but just not make it about the story of the Pilgrims. Because, of course, there was a long history of giving thanks in Native American culture long before European settlers ever arrived. And I would put anybody in the direction of who wants to learn more about this or who wants to kind of like further educate themselves. nativehope.org I found to be a really fantastic resource. Its kind of mission statement is it exists to address the injustice done to Native Americans, share stories, kind of oral histories, and to provide educational resources and to assist Native communities. And they have lots of educational resources for teachers who are looking to teach a more balanced history that includes the Native American perspective around the history of Thanksgiving. And they have kind of things like school activities. And so also I would say that they have a really great kind of set of intentions that we can all, I think, bring into our own Thanksgiving, because Native American Heritage Day is actually the day after Thanksgiving, it was set up by Barack Obama in 2009. Is it ideal that it's on the same day as Black Friday where everyone's going shopping at the mall? No, it's not. But nativehope.org does give us an idea that maybe we can, on Thanksgiving, remember the generosity of the Wampanoag tribe to European settlers, remember the hundreds of thousands of Native Americans who lost their lives because of the ignorance and greed of colonists, and the genocide experienced by whole tribes, which were wiped out, of which we will never get to know what the future history of those tribes could have been. We remember the vibrant and resilient Native descendants, families, and communities that persist to this day throughout the culture and the country. And also, it's a great day to give thanks for people like Sharice Davids and Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, who we've spoken about before, whose hard work and diligence have placed them in positions where Native American voices can be heard.
Yeah, definitely.
And as a final thing, I would say, if there are any American educators listening to this now, the Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of the American Indian, is actually holding a seminar for teachers called The First Thanksgiving, How Can We Tell a Better Story, in January 2025.
I've been there.
Yeah, the Smithsonian's great.
Yeah. I think I was in DC for 10 days and I think I went to like museums every day. It was great. I learned loads of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Sean Sherman, CEO of Sous Chef, I think gives us a really great thing that we can all kind of focus on Thanksgiving, which is kind of like giving thanks for the land that we live on and the native foods and native recipes that come out of the land that we call home. And I think regardless of where we live, whether that's in the US or elsewhere, I think having a relationship with the land that we live on is something that we can all kind of connect with and be thankful for.
Well said. Wow, what a fantastic and in-depth study sesh.
And maybe one day we'll find out what happened to the Roanoke colonists.
Maybe. I think, Leigh, we should meet up again next week.
Yeah.
And weirdly go back in time to episode 7.
To episode 7.
And hopefully some of you listening will want to join us.
Yeah.
And until then.
We are so thankful for you all for listening.
Yeah. Have a lovely holiday season, guys. And we'll hear you. You'll listen to us next week. Wow.
We'll chat next week.
See you then, Leigh.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.